I'm a daughter of an immigrant, and my dad used to say every napkin is 1 cent. I mean, that's the kind of
Yes.
budgeting he would do.
Yes.
And he knew the cost of everything. He knew, and because of it, we became very financially stable, right? As I grew up. And so I never had to worry, but I also learned the value of it. But to some degree, and I find this in a lot of people who are first generation immigrants, first generation people who grow up in the US, find that they are worried about money, even when they're financially totally fine, and it sort of holds them back from making larger expenses or thinking it's too frivolous, or the other way where they get money and they just go wild because they finally
I
have
never had it. Yeah.
and so there's definitely a lot of sort of thought work that goes into how you treat money.
Yeah. Yeah, I think one of the most exciting things in my work is just working with people on their money histories. And it's really great to do with a couple because understanding, sometimes we just have no idea why our partners do what they do. We think that doesn't make any sense at all. It's not logical or doesn't make sense based on my conceptualization of money. But when we can understand more about their histories, their models, their references, then it starts to make a lot more sense, and we can be much kinder with their quirks and figure out, is this a quirk that's serving you still, or is it one that's actually becoming destructive? I mean, it's similar with sex, right? We have references, we have ideas about how things should be. We have our own histories, our own traumas, our
And
own
no one talks
bodies.
about it. Same thing with finances, right?
It's the
No
same
one really.
thing.
There's a lot of judgment about finances, and I think it's more vocal, whereas judgment about sex is a little bit quieter. But I do think that there's a lot of it. And, when we're talking about this, I'm thinking about a couple actually who is a good friend of mine, and the wife is not frugal, but like mindful about how she spends her money. She didn't grow up with any, she was like middle class, like, fine, no financial history. The husband has a financial history where he grew up poor, and he now has come into some wealth, and he's very extravagant on his expenses. And so they do have this struggle back and forth where she's like, look, this doesn't make sense. And he is like, oh, I finally come into these finances where I can enjoy my life. And I don't think either way is wrong. It's just about coming to like, hey, this is, how do we make that work together?
Right. And what creates a sense of safety? I mean, that's the thing. If our partners are extravagant, we may worry that, that we may run out.
Yeah.
We may run out of money. And so if we feel like our partner has no sense of a limit, then we can feel really stressed. Whereas if we understand that our partners will only, they want extravagant things, but they also know where the bottom line is, or, they know where the limit is, then we can feel safe. But again, that's something that can be talked about between people.
What about when the partner who is financially doing well, right? Who's maybe supporting the family, sees the other partner not just like overspending on groceries, but like really being extravagant. How does that play in to their sex lives and their relationship?
Yeah, I actually see this a lot where someone feels like I'm working so hard to take care of us, and everything all I'm working for is going out the door, right? And like I can't ever get ahead, and it just kind of feels like someone's drowning. And being able to talk to the partner and say, look, I feel really alone in this. I feel like I need your participation in this. And when you do these things, it leaves me feeling unsafe. That's often a really great first conversation. It can be hard to have, but the partner may not understand how their choices or how their behavior is affecting the other partner. They may feel like you work hard and you do it. We have enough.
Right, right. And that's really, I hear this a lot. And I think the challenge is men aren't taught how this often happens, and this often happens when it's a male partner and a male partner working and a female partner at home. Now this is changing,
Sure.
But I've seen it a lot where the male partner feels this way, but they were never taught how to have conversations. Like they were never taught to be open with their feelings. Societally, men are told to just suck it up and be quiet. And it's really challenging, I think, in those circumstances, because they just don't feel like they can say something because their partner will be like, oh, we're fine. And they'll just shut down and that's it.
Right. And in a lot of families, it's like your job is, or it's your responsibility to care for the family financially. No one even questions it.
Yeah.
And so there are all these unquestioned narratives that we have, either consciously or unconsciously, and both partners might be colluding on. And so being able to talk about these things and bring these out into the open and question them can be helpful. Where did you get that idea? Same with sex. I have a lot of people who will come and say, well, females, maybe in a heterosexual relationship may say to me, sex is something that a man takes from a woman. And they'll just have it's this notion they've always had. It's my job to protect my body, to protect my virginity, to protect my purity, to protect my family's reputation. Sex is something a man takes from me. So I have to protect that. And when someone has had that narrative, you can imagine then how that may affect your relationship. So again, we may have these narratives about money too, right? It's my partner's job. I contribute in this way. Maybe my job is to take care of the family, take care of the kids, and to be a good sexual partner and take care of them. It's their job to make sure all of our financial needs are met. Now, these roles are changing, but even if they're changing, these underlying unspoken narratives may be controlling what we do, and we may not even recognize that they're in the room. We have our ancestors in the room with us when it comes to sex. We have our ancestors in the room with us when it comes to money. And unless we're conscious of these things, they're going to continue to control us.
And they're subconscious things too, right? Let's give this example because it's not always the case, but let's say the male partner is like, well, that's your job, is to be my sexual partner. And the partner feels like, yeah, that's my job. That's what I've been told to do. And there's either one person feeling like resentful because they have to have duty sex. The other one's feeling like entitled because that's but they don't know they're even feeling it, right? Because they've always been told that. And it's challenging because I think also as the sort of dynamic has changed over the years, we're actually seeing, if you look at demographic data, younger men are becoming more conservative in their views, whereas younger women are becoming more liberal in their views.
That's right.
And so there's more disparity in that same thought process, right? Whereas the conservative view would be that you stay home, you take care of the kids, you're my sexual partner, blah, 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 blah. And that's just a normal thing. And, the liberal view is, well, I have agency. And not to say that they don't think women have agency in these circumstances, but there's this underlying thought process, right? I don't think anyone, I think any good person thinks like, oh, it's a duty of my wife. No, I don't think they think that like consciously. I think it's just like these are subconscious things.
Right. And it's like, I'm showing my love and my care for my family in these particular ways or in these love languages. And I want to receive love back in the ways that I envision. Mm-hmm. And without breaking it down consciously, we're not aware of these narratives that really, once you say them out loud, they may not sound very good.
Right. Like as I'm saying it, I was like, oh, that doesn't sound great.
Right. And again, like when someone says, sex is something that a man takes from a woman, it's like that may not be what was consciously said, and that may not be, what they've discussed with their partner. But when that's the underlying feeling, until it's brought out into the light and we can really look at that and figure out if it really needs to be that way, it can be hard to overcome whatever challenges someone has.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you look at couples who keep separate bank accounts, so I've always found this interesting because when I grew up, my parents, they came to the U.S. with $1,500 in debt. Like they had no money to their name and they built their wealth together. There was never a question about having separate bank accounts, even though my mom did work. She was a registered nurse and my dad had his own business. And so they worked, but there was never a question about that. And so it was always, when I first found out that like couples keep separate bank accounts, I was like, what? I literally, it blew my mind. And I don't think that's bad or good. I just had no idea. Like I was naive to it. And so do you see a difference in the relationships between couples who keep separate spending money or bank accounts compared to those that join them?
That's a really good question. I'm not sure I've ever thought about, I haven't really researched the differences between the two as much. What I would say is the people who can handle joint accounts well are ones where they have trust between them, and they also know that their partner has some similar goal. As them. And yet if they feel like they have very different goals or very different ways of wanting to spend the money, then it may be helpful to have some set aside for oneself so that they know what can be allocated for their spending. It can be challenging when someone feels like they have to hide their spending from their partners, like they come home from shopping and they hide all the shopping bags, because they don't want their partner to see. And the question is why?
Right.
And so I'm always curious about why someone feels they need to hide it. Is it that they just don't think their partner values it? Is it that they think they'd be judged? Would they be made fun of? What are these things? And so I think it's really being able to talk about these things and understand what is it that makes you feel safest when it comes to money is important. So a lot of people feel like they may have seen their parents. I mean, it sounds like your parents had a really great relationship and a great relationship when it came to money. Mm-hmm. But for people who didn't have those models where they saw their parents fight a lot, or they saw one of their parents scraping by to make sure there was enough food, whereas the other partner may have just gone out and spent frivolously, they may feel like, in order to make sure I know my family's safe, I need to know that I have a certain amount in my account to take care of my needs or my family's needs. And I need to be able to see that and know no one can get to that.
Yeah.
So again, it really depends on someone's history and what creates a sense of safety and trust.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's fine as long as both partners are like okay with that, right? Because I think it could be seen as a you don't trust me phenomenon as well, right? And so it could go both ways.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, what I find, sometimes it helps to have separate accounts and a joint account, right? So where if both partners are contributing or one partner is contributing, the joint account is where, and people will decide what comes out of each account, but it's intentional. So the joint account is where, we put our fun money, our vacation money or whatever. And so once that's done, or once we see that that's depleted, then okay, we know that we can't spend more until we put more money into it. Or this joint account is where all of our bills get paid out of. So we fund that first, and we make sure that's in there every month, and then everything else that we don't put in there is our own to spend how we want to. Or we may be pulling out a certain amount for 401k or for investing, or But so I don't think there's a right answer. I think there's ensuring that people understand how they're organizing their money and that they agree on it. I mean, I know in my relationship, my partner and I both like to just know what we have in our own accounts to spend for ourselves, and then know what we have for our expenses, our household expenses. So we like to know that there's something that's just for us, that we don't have to worry about someone else might have depleted and we didn't realize it when we go to buy something.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it helps us to be more accountable too, to know that I'm the one who's responsible for this amount.
In some relationships, there's one partner who manages the finances. And that's sometimes a great thing, right? Because you're like, I can't think, that's one less chore for me to do, or that's one less thing I have to think about, or they're just better at it, right? They can do the budgeting quickly or whatever it is. Do you find that as long as there's a discussion between the partners, that's fine? But do you find situations where, because there's someone else doing all the budgeting, the other partner has no idea, and then that creates stress and anxiety?
Quite often, the partner who may be managing it is doing it often as a gift to their partner. Like, yeah, I'm good at this, or I take care of it. We're totally fine. And I've seen the other partner who's not really been tracking it, feel like, how much do I have to spend? Is it okay if I splurge on something? And they're asking permission at all turns, and they don't feel like they have a right to do anything without asking permission. So I've seen that, whereas one partner is seeing it as, I'm just trying to give you a gift to not worry. The other partner's like, I'm worried because I don't know.
Yeah.
And so being able to talk openly in a way that both partners can understand. And that's the other thing. One partner might say, you have access to the books, or you can call our financial planner anytime. And the partner's like, that's great, but that language doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
Like, what I really want to know is how much can I spend every month and not strain our relationship? And they may be trying to contribute to the relationship by saving. So I've seen, partners who aren't earning money, clipping coupons, online, or waiting until everything's on sale, because that makes them feel like they're a contributor too, when they're not working, they're not bringing in cash anymore. And, so they're doing what they can, whereas their partner's like, feeling like, you know what, I really wish you wouldn't spend your time on that and you could actually just enjoy because we have enough. But what's enough is going to be really dependent on this couple and what their goals are.
Yeah, and sometimes I can imagine that like doing those things, like the partner's almost annoyed sometimes if it's taking away time from other things, right? Potentially like, and they're not valuing it because they don't think they need it.
Right. They may not understand that this is a way the partner's trying to show their contribution, because they may have stopped working to care for a family, or, their partner may earn way more money. And so they're helping in other ways in the house, but it may be unpaid labor. And, they may feel like I'm not really contributing because I'm not bringing in money, whereas they may actually be contributing significantly. But I think it's really always down to how do the partners think about this? The distress, it's interesting when we look at the research, distress isn't about whether we have enough, it's about our perception of distress around money. And it's our perception of imbalance and lack of autonomy. So people could be financially very well off, but it's how they perceive this that leads to how they really experience their world and how they feel in their relationship, how safe they feel in their relationship, how trusting they feel. So anything that builds trust and safety is, financially, is often going to help with their sex lives. Typically, unless some people get off on riding the edge and they really like risk, but that's a whole different topic and conversation.
What percentage of people are stressed about their finances?
I would imagine a very large percentage. I don't know the actual numbers. It's a good question, but I will look that up, and you're welcome to put that in your.
I imagine podcast. It's quite high because so what I'm gathering from this conversation is like this is very common, and I think the perception piece is so important because. Look, I know a lot of, well-off physicians who struggle, right? Or who perceive that they're struggling, right? They're fine, but they struggle because they have to make these bigger decisions about money, about what to do about money, how to protect their money, what's going to happen when they retire, if they want to keep the lifestyle they have, all these sorts of questions that come up. Right. But they're financially very well off, right? They're in the top percentiles of the country in terms of their economic well-being, but it's like rich people problems, right? And you're like, what are you worried about, right? And we've all sort of, everyone has at some point worried about money. I can't imagine there's a single person who hasn't, but I think the perception piece is really, really important.
It is the perception. And really, it comes down to when you're talking about people who are stressed about this, it may sound like a rich person problem, but they may not have a roadmap for it because perhaps they didn't ever see how to live with money before. Mm-hmm. So they feel very out of their element, right? Yeah. They didn't know, they may know how to earn it. They don't know how to live with it. Yeah. So learning how to live with what you have and how to make sense of it when you're in another phase or state is important. And so that's really, people need some help with their financial adjustment, really.
Absolutely. And, I think the other thing is like the unknown. And I think that even bothers people because in medicine we have very stable jobs, right? Like we're taking care of patients. Where there's always going to be, unfortunately, there's always going to be a need for physicians. So that's not as huge of an issue. But I find that people, when they're in positions where the income is dependent on sales or other sorts of factors, where it's really the unsure, like, am I going to be able to make money like I am right now? And I find that I think about that a lot with even the very, very wealthy. I'm like, one, they live in excess, right? Because they have so much, but then they also like never know when their next job is coming. So they just keep working and you're like, you have so much money. Like, why are you still working so hard? And I think that's the only thing I can conceptualize because I have never lived with that amount of wealth, but I imagine that that's what's going on.
I think you're right. I mean, I think again, each person's story is different. But when someone doesn't have a consistent income or a consistent way to earn income, and as some people who are like gig workers or who work project to project and they don't know where the next project's coming, then it can feel like really people are coming from a mind frame of deficit, right? And like at any moment, like I might have something now, but I don't know how long this has to last me.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been hard. I've been seeing a lot of my clients, I'm up in the Bay Area and a lot of my clients work in tech, and seeing people go from this market where they just felt like there was always money to come. They went into the right field, they studied all the right things, and suddenly their jobs have been threatened. They've been losing their jobs. There's a lot of trauma that goes with that. And so suddenly they're like, wait, I have this money that I saved, but how long is this going to have to last me while I'm looking for my job or my next job? And so that's really scary. And, one layoff is enough to make someone feel traumatized and never feel safe again. Yeah. And then how does that, again, affect the relationship, affect the intimacy?
Yeah. You like that episode with Heather Howard? Make sure to check out the full episode right here.